This time on Poll Hub, we're off to the battlegrounds. Our brand new polls from Ohio and Pennsylvania, where Trump and Biden are doing battle, but there are also two states where the most critical Senate races in the nation are taking place. We're taking an early pulse to see where things stand with less than 5 months to go until Election Day. Then, do you sometimes feel addicted to your screens? Is your phone the first thing you see in the morning? The last thing you see when you go to bed? Now imagine what's happening to kids who have never lived in a non-screen world. Are iPad babies a good thing? A bad thing? A reality? We've got a lot to talk about there, and we finish with a debate about water. Really? There's a debate about water? Oh, yes, there is, and that's our fun fact this week. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Barbara Carvalho.
I'm Mary Griffith.
And I am Lee Marigoff.
Well, hi, everybody. We have a couple of polls out this week. We are starting the battleground chit chat, and I assume, a lot of people probably wonder, why now? Why now start this craziness? But for pollsters, not only is it entertainment and helps us through some of the boredom, but more seriously, it's important for us to put together some benchmarks so that as things progress within the campaign, we have a benchmark, a sense of what is where do these states start? Where do these polls start as we move to the campaign season and have lots going on? So this time around, we picked two of the more prominent states, not just because they have in the past been battleground states, competitive states, although Ohio is becoming more consistently Republican. But we picked Ohio and Pennsylvania, but not only because of the presidential contest, but also because they have a couple of competitive Senate races that could determine which way the Senate majority lands. So first off, Ohio, and that's certainly a state that former President Donald Trump won by about 8 percentage points in 2020. He now leads Biden by 7 percentage points among registered voters, and that's in a multi-candidate field. We have moved to that multi-candidate field because we actually have candidates who may be on the ballots in states besides just the Democrat and Republican. We have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., He's in the low single digits, 5 points he received of support in Ohio, and then a couple of other third-party candidates that are really barely registering. And if I understand it, they have a tough time getting into any kind of presidential debates where the threshold in public polls is 15 points. But what we find there is that Trump seems to be, moving along just where he left off in 2020. And in Pennsylvania, Trump is just narrowly ahead. And although we probably don't even call it ahead, but it's more of a divide because there's only 2 points between Trump and Biden in Pennsylvania. So, Lee, why don't you start us off? I know you were particularly interested in kind of the changes that we have seen in Ohio over the last decade and a half, and you're real excited about that Senate contest as well.
Yes, and as anybody who's anywhere near me in the last couple weeks, months even, I'm always interested in what is going to be the relationship between the presidential vote and the Senate vote. And in our nation's history, there's always been split ticketing. So you've had Democrats voting for president, but maybe voting for Republican, and vice versa in the states. And in 2016, that came to a grinding halt, and it has never happened before that every state that Hillary Clinton carried a Democratic Senate candidate won, and every state that Donald Trump carried a Republican Senate candidate won in those states, obviously, where there were races. And in 2020, last time out, the same pattern took place with the exception of Maine, where Joe Biden, the Democrat, carried it, and Susan Collins, the Republican, carried it, and everything else was just like 2016. Now, what I find fascinating about this is that, and I think these polls really speak to it, but since 1920, when Senate first got its popular vote, we haven't had a pattern like 2016 or 2020 where it just went a perfect match with one exception. So what we were really interested about in this particular poll of these two states not only the presidential contest for what is a combined 36 electoral votes in the two states, but also what are these two Senate Democratic incumbents going to do? Because we know that the battle for the Senate is going to be waged really ferociously. And what's really interesting to us, I think, certainly to me, and anybody, as I say, down the corridor who comes within earshot, is that Donald Trump is leading in both of these states, as Barb indicated, but the Democrat is also leading in Ohio and marginally ahead in Pennsylvania. So you have Jared Brown and Casey in Pennsylvania, the two Democrats, doing well. And while Donald Trump looks like he's positioned perhaps to win the electoral vote, although Pennsylvania, as you said, is still very close. So voters in Ohio, 1 in 10 of the Trump voters are also voting for the Democrat for Senate. And I think that is really fascinating. I'm not sure everybody agrees with me, but this is certainly something that the Democrats, if Joe Biden does not win the White House, they sure want to hold on to the Senate. And it also helps explain why in 2022, during the midterm elections, Joe Biden could be very unpopular and the Democrats could have a really good election in the midterm election, which they did. So there's a lot of dynamics in here and they are changing.
So the Senate thing is interesting to me for another reason. There are only 5 states left that have senators from different parties. In other words, one senator's Democrat, one senator's Republican, or in the case of Maine, one's an independent. And of those states, how many are up for election this year? Montana, West Virginia, Ohio, and Wisconsin, right? So we've got 3 of these states, 2 of the one that we're talking about, Ohio, but these states are unique. And in the case of West Virginia, it's almost certainly going to go away. West Virginia's not going to be one of these anymore. Montana may be, but Ohio is a really great example, as you've been pointing out, of a state that is very rare. It has a senator from each party, and it has trended very strongly towards the Republicans since Barack Obama won both times by very narrow margins in Ohio. What I think is interesting here is there is this split, but I also think that the margins, when you look at all of the undecided and the other votes and all the other stuff, Donald Trump doesn't get to 50. He just doesn't get to 50. And I know this is June, and this is something we would talk about in October. If you're not getting to 50, then you're not necessarily, you're not like the front runner, right? And I think in this case, that's something to watch, is I think there's still a lot of people, this isn't so true in Ohio, but in Pennsylvania, where we have a much closer race than we do in Ohio. And I should probably give you those numbers so we know what we're talking about here. We have among registered voters, and we'll also do a likely, we have Biden at 45 and Trump at 47, RFK at 3, and then some other candidates. If you look at just the definitely voting, it's still a 2-point race, 46 Biden, 48 Trump. So closer than Ohio. But I think if you look at that and you say, well, even definitely voting, Trump's at 48%. We have seen this over and over again in our polling from 2016 on. He's got a ceiling. He always has a ceiling. And there are very few persuadable voters out there who aren't identifying with him now, at least from what we've seen in most of our polling, and I think what you see in a lot of other polling. So I think that's what I'm looking at in terms of this trend. And Barb, you mentioned that's what we're doing here, right? We're setting the marker so we know where this goes. That's what I'm going to look at. Does Trump's number bounce?
Well, I just wanted to pose the question of the third-party candidates that we have running. So, Jay, you're talking about the ceiling that Trump has with the emergence of the third-party candidates like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, Jill Stein, so on and so forth. They can have an impact in the race as well. Barb, Lee, weigh in here.
Yeah, I think that for the Robert Kennedy numbers are interesting in that in our other national polls and in these two, we're not seeing him disproportionately pulling from one of the candidates, but I think Jill Stein and Cornel West are more likely to have an impact, if at all, in a narrow state race, taking it from Joe Biden. The Libertarian candidate, who's not getting much at all right now, would be a threat to Donald Trump, presumably. I think Jay started this out by saying we only have 5 months to go, or we still have 5 months to go. I'm not sure which way the emphasis is, but yeah, so the third party is something we always watch, and third party candidates tend to get more in the spring and summer than they end up getting in the fall as people start thinking, well, is this person really going to win or not? So I think that's something
and getting on the ballot is a big issue this time around.
Yeah.
And Jill Stein won't be on the ballot in Ohio because the Green Party's been banned. Now she can get on another party, but the Green Party has not getting on the ballot in Ohio. So I think a lot of this is, if they get on the ballot, maybe, but they're not even on the ballot in a lot of cases. So there's a long way to go, especially with the third party candidates. This is not Ross Perot. This is not that year, right?
No, but before we move on from this, I think one of the things that I always take away from the state polling, which is different from the national numbers, is this is where the contest is actually going to be determined, because this is where the electoral votes for each state. And one of the takeaways that I saw from this polling was not even so much in the top line toss-ups, but in the fact that residents in both of these states really feel that they were better off during Trump's term as president than Biden's term as president. And I think that's very telling. I mean, in Ohio, we're looking at 59% of residents who believe they and their families were better off while Trump was president. And a similar number, 54%, feel that way in Pennsylvania. So I think that really makes it an uphill road for Joe Biden. It's not just about the economy. That question doesn't just tap into whether people are feeling, financially well off. It's about the direction of the country. It's about how things are going in general. And that's a really, really tough thing to turn that boat around.
Well, Joe Biden, I think, has to make Donald Trump also be an incumbent. You don't want to have Donald Trump being the candidate for change and Joe Biden the incumbent, because that's where you're going to get into some trouble if you're Joe Biden. But clearly, Joe Biden has to win Pennsylvania to get reelected. Ohio can be Donald Trump's, and it still may not get him to 270. Mary, you had one more thing to say, I think, on this before we scoop.
Well, I was actually going to say that we could sit and debate politics all day, but there is also another debate that's going on closer to the home front, not just my home front, although the debate does occur in my home. And that's the question of how much screen time is too much screen time for America's youth. So let's take a look at some of the numbers. According to a March 2024 Pew Research survey, most teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17, 95% have access to a smartphone. 38% say that they do spend too much time on their phone, but 70% feel that there are more benefits than harm. Now, I'm going to editorialize here. What else are they going to say if they're spending all that time on their cell phones? But 69% find it easier to explore hobbies. 37% say it's easier to develop friendships using this type of technology. So, how much time are they on their phones? According to a Gallup poll released in October of 2023, 51% of teenagers have a screen time of at least 4 hours per day. My kids don't fall within that age range, but if I would let them stay on their phones that long, they absolutely would. But what about younger kids? So we look at kids within the age range of my two boys, among 8 to 12-year-olds. The time frame, and this is astounding to me, according to a survey from Common Sense, was about 5.5 hours. So the question that we're posing today is, how is this different, really, from what adults do? And how much of this is a result of the time that our kids spent on iPads and laptops and smartphones during the COVID-19 pandemic? And I'm going to get myself into trouble, so I'm opening it up to the team.
Oh, your kids don't listen to this podcast, do they? On their smartphones? No. So remember,
no, actually, she has it blocked. She has it blocked.
Yeah, well, this is adult content only. So remember, this is all happening in this framework of this conversation. It's been happening since Jonathan Haidt wrote the article in The Atlantic about basically saying that cell phones screen time are destroying our children. It's a little hyperbolic, but that's kind of his point. And then a lot of pushback, and there's been this huge discussion about this. And so what I thought was interesting about this segment that one of our Gen Z producers put together, and we're going to find out about screen time from him, is that this conversation is happening among adults, right? And yet at the same time, what you alluded to, Mary, is that we're on our phones as much as they are. And we're the ones who the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning before we say good morning, honey, is look at our phone. And it's the last thing we do before we get to bed. So there is a bit of hypocrisy here, but I do wonder what's the difference between those of us who grew up in an era before this. Most of our lives, the majority of our lives were spent before there were smartphones with us at all times. Computers a little different, but you had to go to the computer. And now,
Yeah, but a lot of us were on TV. I mean,
sure. That's a one-way
watching
thing.
TV.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
a one-way thing, and I think there's a lot of difference in that. Maybe not. I mean, a lot of researchers suggest that's a fundamentally different thing. But I just think it's interesting to think about the kids that we're talking about have never lived in a world where their parents and they did not have a smartphone. We've come that far since the iPhone that we're basically, for anybody who's 18 and under, they don't remember a time because they were too young before there were smartphones. I think that's a big deal.
Well, I'm really an old fogey here, because although I can even remember, Blackberries, I actually used my smartphone for silly things like email, texting, taking pictures, playing games, and being social. And I think maybe I'm just, kind of antisocial. Everybody knows I prefer animals to people. But it's
because they don't have smartphones. There's no smartphones. Hooves don't work on that screen.
No, and neither do paws.
Or paws.
Neither do paws. But I did find it very interesting, and what you're pointing out too, Jay, is that this is a problem about cell phones, and I'm not sure that it's age related, except for the fact that we do think that children are more impressionable than adults. But I think this is a significant habit, regardless of people's age. And I think, Mary, when you point out that younger children actually spend more time on their smartphones than teenagers, really speaks to the fact that it's kind of how we pass the time. It's the entertainment value. But I remember being startled by many, many years ago by the fact that I was riding to a restaurant with Lee's sister-in-law, who has since passed away, but was a faculty member at Vassar, and she pulled out her smartphone. She's playing, she's looking at it in the back of the car, and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what she's reading. No, she's playing Candy Crush. So I think there's something universal here about how we entertain ourselves with video, with social media, and all the things that our smartphones can do and will be able to do in the future.
Or you have to have a PhD in sociology from the University of Chicago and teach at Vassar College to enjoy whatever you call it, that game.
Candy Crush? Yeah.
Candy Crush.
There is one really interesting thing here, and that is, you alluded to this, Mary, the pandemic, and there has been a real acceleration. So we're talking about this as if it's a static thing. It's not. So in April 2022, Pewful found that tablet usage among kids 11 and under jumped from 68% to 81% between 2020 and 2021. That's the pandemic. Smartphone usage increased 63% to 71%, and tablet usage among kids 5 and under went from 51% to 69%. So there is an acceleration happening here that I think is what maybe is sparking some of this concern among people, that maybe this is more than just, a new form of entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, I will say just anecdotally, a couple of points here is that, my almost 3-year-old, she does use my smartphone and watches, nursery rhymes and videos, and is very, very adept. But what's a little bit scary is she'll wake up some days and say, can I have mommy's phone, or can I give it back? Because I say, okay, you can have mommy's phone, but give it back. And it's almost like it's immediate. And so we've started having to temper it and pull it back. I mean, and what I've found with it is that we use it as a learning tool, so that while she's watching it, we try to engage with her while she's watching it. But it's frightening how quickly it could become immediate. Can I have mommy's phone? Can I have daddy's phone? So that's one point. Barb, to your point about everybody using their cell phone, I think I shared this story with Lee and Barb last week or 2 weeks ago, that my daughter will pretend when I'm calling her, she'll say, hang on just a second, Barbara's texting me, because I say that sometimes in the house. So she sees me fairly consistently on my cell phone in various capacities, but that's the one that punched through. And just finally, finally, you tell how often Barb and I text each other. But my soon-to-be 10-year-old, he and his friends get together on their smartphones and play video games. Now, some of them are on the shared online video game platforms. My son Joseph is not. but they play independently. And it reminds me back to when they were toddlers or in preschool, and it was parallel play. So yeah, they'll talk to each other every once in a while, and I question whether or not this is necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Yes, they're still engaging to some extent, but it's very much parallel, and there's not as much interaction as, I mean, they'll sit there for 5 minutes and not say a word to each other and just play their video games. But yet at the same time, when it's a rainy day, they're fighting boredom. So
Now,
I don't know.
all right, so here it is. I'm the senior statesman of the group, and I use it. It's the only place where I'm modern because I'm doing, communication the way everybody is. I'm guilty
No,
as
because
charged.
no, you're
However,
modern. You're
however,
modern. You're modern. You're modern because you're obsessed with it.
well, there you go. But I'm doing politics and I'm doing, news. I'm doing sports. I keep track of what's going on sports-wise. But then if I do look at
You get dog and cat videos.
and if I do get Taylor Swift, because one time you look at Taylor Swift, you now get Taylor Swift, and I also get the Beatles and things like that. But Hunter, I'm at the extreme. I'm the senior folk here. Now you are of the generation that always gets castigated by these things, and now you find out you're not as guilty as everyone else. What say you about all this stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels good to know that I'm not as guilty as everyone else when I wake up in the morning and I pick up that phone immediately. But I have to admit, I do think that this is a major generational issue, specifically because the younger generations aren't growing up with that other option of, let's go get a boombox, let's use the stereo, let's use the car navigation. I mean, even now we have CarPlay, which is always the preferred go-to. And I mean, it replaced car radio and it replaced car navigation. And it's, every single thing that has used to be its own product. I even have a TV in my bedroom and I don't use the TV. I prefer to watch it on my laptop, or I prefer to scroll TikTok. And you'll even find movies that are uploaded to TikTok now. I mean, it's a very crazy world. And I think it's a little bit dangerous that it's all in this small little handheld device.
Do you feel like you use it too much? You're on it too much?
I'm going to say no, because I feel like whenever I use it, I always try and use it to a benefit. I'm definitely on it a lot, but I'm always doing something. I don't have a choice but to use it at this point. I mean, even my job is mostly remote work where I sit at a computer or a phone and I'm staring at a screen all day and there's no escaping it. So
that's our fault, by the way, folks. That's his job he's talking about. So
He's doing an excellent job at it, Jay.
Okay, rough segue now. Rough segue. So when it comes to these phones, we are all doing it and we'll all toast it and drink to that. Speaking of drinking to that, there was a fun fact.
You were just going to bail on us. I thought that was like, I'm just going to bail on that segment. No.
No, never. Generally speaking, under a fun fact was asked by CBS in 2021, do you think bottled water tastes better than tap water? Does tap water taste better than bottled water? Or do they pretty much taste the same to you? I'm not a big water drinker anyway, but bottled water, according to National Survey, tastes better, 58%, only 9% going for the tap water, although sometimes people who live in New York City think it's the best tasting water ever.
It is.
We may hear about that.
100%.
And then, there you go. And the taste the same was at 31. Okay, Hunter, we're going to go back to you on this for the fun fact. Tell us about what you like to drink when it comes to water.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go with the bottled water. And no offense to Jay, but I think if I went down to New York City and I was given the choice of tap water or bottled water, I would take the bottled water every day of the week.
Yeah, that tap water has a flavor to it, which makes us nervous for upstaters. Barb, you drink a bottled water a lot, right?
Oh, no, I mean, I am particular about my water, but water has all different tastes depending upon where you are. I have a wonderful deep well at my home. And what's interesting is the well is probably tapping into some of the estuaries that are feeding the reservoirs that actually go down to New York City. So my water at my home is absolutely amazing. I often take bottled water only simply because I'm on the go. And I find that if I start drinking bottled water more frequently than that, I start feeling badly about all the the bottles that I'm accumulating.
Oh.
So, but even the bottled waters all have different tastes.
Yeah.
From Avion to Poland Spring to Aquafina. I mean, I can kind of tell the difference between all of the different brands. So I am a water drinker. I mean, that is true. I'm a water drinker. So I would be more sensitive to the flavor. And New York City has great water, and I'm just glad that I can tap into it for free.
Aha, there must have been a pun in that one. Jay the Dapper, you have both Hudson Valley water and New York City water at your disposal.
Well, they're actually, as Barb points out, they're the same. So New York City water comes from the Catskills and then also partly from Westchester County and Putnam. And it's widely considered to be the best, tap water in the world because it's coming from these incredible spaces. But I think this question is kind of misleading because it's totally dependent on where you live about how you answer. Nobody's going to say they prefer tap water in LA. LA water is terrible because it's processed and chlorinated and filtered and all this other stuff. Water in a lot of the country, tap water, doesn't taste very good. It's safe. I mean, we spend, more money than anybody to make sure that we have safe tap water in this country, and that's great. But it doesn't taste very good. So I think that the question kind of missed the, I don't know that this is a totally fair question because I think it's so dependent on where you live. I don't drink bottled water because of the microplastics, and I'm convinced that this is my conspiracy theory, that all the microplastics that they're finding in every piece of our world, including every cell in our body, I think is probably not a good thing. So I don't ever drink bottled water. But we do have a well here, and we have a cistern. So we have two types of drinking water. The cistern, which has to go through a UV filter because you could get little germs in there from the animals, is incredible tasting. It's even better than New York City water. The well water, which went down 300 feet, tastes like sulfur. So we had to get a filter for that. So yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated. But water is important.
Mary?
I'm with Barb. Hydration is really the important thing in all of this.
Okay, and Mary, I'd like to know about you. I'd like to know about your mom. I'd like to know about your kids because we got multi-generations here.
Goodness. Okay, let me be quick. I drink bottled water. I do prefer tap water. My mom swears by tap water, and my boys drink bottled water. My husband tends to drink bottled water as well.
Wow. Now, does the water that comes out of the refrigerator, that's tap water, right?
It's tap water, but it's filtered, yes.
Okay, so there's a need for another category because I've seen people doing a lot of that too. Anyway.
I love the water that comes out of my refrigerator.
Okay, very good. All right, well, now we know all about that. See you next week, folks.
That'll do it for Poll Hub this week.
Poll Hub is produced by the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer. Casey Schaff is our production supervisor.
The Poll Hub team includes Athen Hollis, Delaney Hayes, and Hunter Petro.
If you enjoyed Poll Hub, consider telling a friend about us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal.
If you have questions for us, tweet them at us at Marist Poll.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub, and with any luck, it'll cooperate.
And finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button.
Click it, and the latest episode will be ready for you
In your podcasting app as soon as it's released.
We'll see you next time.